Okay. This recording is going to cover the steps we'll take in part 1 of the project, in which we'll take a house from the Appalachian Energy Center's database and recreate it in Revit. In the video, I'm going to show the cardinal as the house that I've chosen, which is the one that we're doing in class together. But you can still use this video then as a reference for how you would approach it with the house that you've chosen in your design. So a couple of things that we're going to go over in the video is, first, I'll show you how to download the plans from the Appalachian Energy Center website and then extract a zip file. We'll look at also how to take an AutoCAD file and insert it into our Revit project, and some pitfalls of why we may want to and may not want to do that. I often don't insert files into Revit, but rather just have them open in AutoCAD as a reference for whenever I need them. We'll look at how to add a level, which is something we'll need to do for the cardinal because it's a 2-story house. But if you've chosen a 1-story house, you wouldn't need to add a level to this particular project. We'll also look at then how to create walls in our Revit project and change our wall types. So you can see here in this little preview that I have, my interior walls are thinner than my exterior walls, and that's because of the sheathing, the siding, the fact that this is typically going to be laid out with a larger piece of lumber to account for more insulation versus the interior ones. We'll look at how to place some windows and how to change our window sizes and kind of customize our windows a little bit. And then how to place doors in, as well as load in different door types. So we'll load in a pocket door and we'll load in some sliding doors. And then finally, we'll create a floor. Things that we're not going to cover in this video are such as adding our stairs, adding our foundation, adding our roof, and customizing all of the materials or the parameters that are going to be sitting in this house. We're going to do that later on. So if that's what you're looking for, then please skip to that video. But in this one, we're going to cover just kind of the basics of getting something started. And so let me close out of this one so that way I'm on my fresh Revit page. And the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create a new model. So I'm going to click on New Model. And for the template, I often like using the Imperial Architectural. We don't want to use metric because we don't use the metric system and it's something that we're sort of not familiar with. So it's probably best not to opt for one of those. So I'm just going to do Imperial Architectural. I don't want to click on Make a Project Template. I just want to create a new project. And then I'll click OK. And this is going to launch me into a completely blank version of Revit. So right now I'm in the level 1 floor plan. So I can zoom in and out using my scroll wheel. I can pan around holding the scroll wheel down. So if I hold the scroll wheel like a button, I can move my drawing back and forth. These 4 arrows here are our elevation markers. So once we place an elevation onto a sheet, these are going to fill in with information about the view number and then the sheet number. So this stuff is going to get filled automatically. So when we draw our building, we're going to want to try to put it in between these 4 arrows, but we can also highlight any of these and move them around. So if we need a larger space or a smaller space, we can move things around and make them fit. But before I get going, I'm going to go download my file that I need. So you can either just Google for the Appalachian Energy Center Passive Homes, or if you come down here to the Revit resources on Azure Learn, we have the Appalachian Energy Center Passive Solar Handbook. If I click on that link, it'll bring me to the website that has all of them in here. And what I'm going to do is just download the plans for the cardinal. So I'll click on Download Plans. This is going to bring me to a Google Drive link for the zip file. So in order to actually download this file, I'm going to click Download and then wait for it to finish downloading. And then I'll go into, let me bring this onto the screen. I'll go into my downloads folder and I have it right here, but it's in a zipped folder. So what I'm going to need to do is extract this, and I can extract it kind of anywhere I necessarily want it to go. So I'm just going to click on it. I could also right click, and here's extract, or it's also a button up here. When I go to extract it, it's going to ask me, where do you want to put this? By default, it'll just put it where the file was located originally. So it's going to put it in my downloads folder. If I wanted to put it like on my flash drive or something, I could then just click on this browse, and I could go find my flash drive here and I could put it there. So I'm going to put it like in my Google Drive folder, and I'll say this is where I want it to go. And then I'll hit extract. Did this get moved? Then here, I'll just put it here for the destination. I'll just leave it in my downloads. There we go. And see how this doesn't have a little zipper on it? That means that this is an unzipped file, which means that I'll be able to go in this folder and I'll be able to access the DWG file, which is the AutoCAD file, as well as then some pictures that could be helpful, and a PDF file too that is from the AutoCAD drawings. Occasionally, while we're working, I might reference this picture here. Let me again put it on this one, just to get ideas for like how some of the windows may look, how the roof pitches are kind of looking. As the house, from just our floor plans, we may not be able to get all of the information that we need or that we are looking for. And if I want to try to visually recreate this, having this picture here will be kind of helpful. Another thing to keep in mind is we're going to recreate it to the best of our ability, but we do not need to absolutely make it exactly the same. So if I want to change something with the windows, I have the ability to change that with the windows. And the same thing then goes for your projects of the houses that you chose. I want you to recreate it as accurately as possible, but if you make a couple of changes, that's going to be totally okay. So now I have this folder downloaded and extracted. I'm going to go into AutoCAD, or excuse me, into Revit, and I'm going to insert this file in here. So one thing I notice when students insert files in is they tend to not think about what they're inserting, and then they make a big old mess in the software. So I'm going to come up here to the Insert tab, and I'm going to import a CAD file. You can also link a CAD file, but I personally don't like this as much because if you accidentally delete the CAD file, then it goes away in Revit, versus import, it'll stay here no matter what. So I'll click on Import CAD. When it asks me, where is your file? I'm going to come up here and say, go into my Downloads folder. Here's the folder that has my files in it. And here's the file that I'm looking for, the cardinal file. Instead of it importing in every single one of my layers, what I'm going to ask it to do is to specify my layers. So after I import this in, I'll be able to say what layers do I want to bring it in or bring in, which will make it a little bit easier to deal with and manage. So I'm just going to change that to specify and click open. And when this pops up, instead of bringing in all of this stuff, because I really just only need the floor plans for this, I'm going to say check none, and then I'm going to check off any layer that's associated with plans. Overhead, pattern, prefix, porch, stairs, wall, which might be woodwork, window work, I'm not sure, but anything that just has the prefix architectural plan, I'm going to leave checked, and I'll say okay. And we can see that when it brought stuff in, it brought in a heck of a lot less, which makes it a little bit easier to work with or deal with. The other thing that it did, though, was put it all the way up here in this corner, and I want to move it so that way it's kind of over here. So what I'm going to do is just click on it. Once this gets highlighted, I'll click, and I can't just drag it to move it because it's currently pinned in place. So what I need to do is just click on that to unpin it. And now I can move and drag this, and I'm just going to drag it so that it's somewhat in the middle of this area. Where exactly isn't going to matter. A benefit of importing this CAD in is that when I go to place my walls, I'm actually going to be able to snap to some of the different points in here. So I can use that as a huge help to make sure place my walls and have them kind of accurately. When I checked off which layers to bring in, it also got rid of my dimensions, which in my opinion will be a good thing for us. So that way later on when we go over dimensions and annotating, we can kind of just focus on making construction friendly numbers than trying to make it perfectly what is in the set of documents, because we might choose a few different materials in our building. So at this point, I'm ready to start placing some walls in here. So I'm going to come back to my architecture tab and I'm going to start the wall tool, which is keyboard shortcut WA. So I'm just going to click on wall and it puts me into my properties menu for walls. And there are a few things I always want to pay attention to when I'm in here. One is the type of wall that I'm creating. The other is then the base constraint of my wall and then the top constraint of my wall. So I always want to see where's the bottom of my wall, where is the top. Very rarely do I leave it unconnected unless I'm trying to do something like a half wall or something like that. So I'm going to leave myself as a generic 8-inch wall, because if I open up this menu here by just clicking on it, this is what I'm going to make into my exterior wall. And then I also have a generic 5-inch that I'm going to use for interior walls, and we'll just leave them there as placeholders for the time being. So I'm going to put it at 8-inch. And for my top constraint, I'm going to run into a problem in which if I have it go up to level 2, that means it's going to start at level 1, it's going to go up to level 2, and it's not going to be high enough to be a 2-story exterior wall. And so I can either make a level beforehand or I can do a level afterwards. I'll do a level afterwards. And so for top constraint, I'm just going to say go up to level 2. And then here, since this is CAD work or vector work, it's picking up on where these lines are. And I can just click to start and just make my wall go until where it sees that it intersects on this one. So I'm just tracing around the center of these walls. I'm aware that the wall I'm making is thicker than the wall that exists in the drawing, and that's okay. So I'm just going to trace around the entire exterior, and once I'm all done, I'll hit escape about 3 or 4 times to completely end the command, and then let's look at this as a 3-dimensional building so far. So if I click on my 3D view, I'm brought into looking at my building 3-dimensionally. We can see here it's only 1 story. And I'm actually going to change my visual style here to be consistent colors, which is what I like to use in the 3-dimensional view. That's kind of an optional thing, but it's just something that I like to do. And what I need to do in order to make a 2-story building is I need to add in another level. So I currently have level 1, I have level 2 sitting at 10 feet. I need to add a 3rd level for the roof. You can only add levels when you are in one of these elevation views. So I'm just going to double click on any one of the elevations. It doesn't matter which one. And we can see here that this button for level is no longer gray. When I'm in the 3D view, this button is grayed out because I can't use it. But when I'm in the east elevation, again, just double clicking on that, I now can create a new level. So I'm going to click on the level button. And I'm just going to make a level 10 feet above. So as I hover over this, it's just telling me when I'm 10 feet. And then I'm just going to drag it across so that way these all stay kind of linked and in line with each other. Not a required thing, but just again, it's going to make it a lot neater if all of your spot elevation levels are at the same height. And then I'll hit escape to end the command. If I want to rename this from level 3 to roof, I can do what's called a slow double click. So I zoom in on it and I can click on it release, click on it again, and I can rename this into roof. And it's asking, do you want to rename its corresponding views? So that means it's going to rename how it shows up here in my project browser. So I'll say, yes, I do. And now that's called roof. And what I can do to easily bring all four of these walls up to the roof is go back into my 3D view. And if I hover over one of these walls without clicking and hit tab, it's going to allow me to select the chain of walls. So again, I'll click over here off of it. I hover over one wall without clicking. I hit tab. I can click on all of them. And I can change the top constraint now. Instead of up to level 2, I can change it to say go up to the roof. And when I move my cursor out of the properties bar, it adjusted these walls to be higher. Another huge benefit about having everything with your top constraints and bottom constraints to specific levels is if I decided to change this roof height from 20 feet, so if I click on the 20 feet and I make it 40, and I'll just zoom out so we can see this happen, the building became taller because I'm telling the building that the top of the wall has to go up to whatever level the roof is at. So it's just kind of a little bit of a benefit there. There we go. Had a little struggle to clicking on the right one, but I'm going to leave it set at 20. And now I have my exterior walls going up the full length. I'm going to go back into the level 1 floor plan. And I'm going to start placing my interior walls. And just how I ignored windows here, I'm going to do the same thing with these doors because a window needs a wall to be hosted in it, and so does a door. So I'm going to go back into the wall tool, but this time I'm going to change my wall type to be a generic 5-inch. And I'm just going to, sometimes I have to zoom in to make sure I'm getting the center, but I'm just going to make a wall here. I'll hit escape once, so that way I can make another little wall here. Hit escape once. Hitting escape twice ends the command altogether. Escape once just gets you out of the chain if a chain keeps happening. Do I want to put a half wall here or not? I'll put a full wall in here. And let's say, oh no, I didn't put it in the right spot. So I'll hit escape twice to end the command entirely. I can move these around. I can use the arrow key on my keyboard to move it. I can drag it around. And then I'll also show you a tool called Align that we can use in order to move and manipulate this. And furthermore, if I wanted this to actually be like a 4-inch brick wall instead of a 5-inch generic, I can just click on the wall, come here to my properties, and I can change it. And it will just update the wall in the model. So I can make kind of changes as I see fit or as I want to when I'm working. But I'm going to go back into my wall tool and just zoom in to try to get that center. There we go. Whoop. And I'll just go down. I'm going to go straight across even though there's this little gap here for this like pantry shelf. I'm just going to bring that straight across, hit escape. I'm going to bring this straight across, hit escape. Technically, we've got like this thicker plumbing wall here, but for the sake of our sanity, I'm just going to make it a 5-inch generic wall. So I'm just tracing around all of the walls. Hit escape, and I got that one. And I still have this one in the kitchen. So I'll go back into the tool because I hit escape twice. And now I'll hit escape twice. And I've got all of my walls placed for my first floor. There are, again, a few little things that I need to adjust in here. Namely, I want to break this apart into 2, which I could have drawn it as a wall here, hit escape, put another wall here. But instead, what I'm going to do is use a modify tool called split. So if I click on this wall, I get this modify toolbar, and I can split the element and then just cut this So now it's two separate walls, and I'll cut this one too as well. So now it's two separate walls, and then I can hit escape twice to end the tool, and I can drag this one over, drag this one over. I kind of prefer doing splits often because it's a way just to ensure that these are sitting in line with each other. And then I'll just drag this over. So that way, again, this is all sitting in line with each other. Another thing we could possibly use is a tool called Align. And so what Align does is, let's say I want to make sure that this wall is sitting flush with this one. So what I'm going to do is click on either one of them, come up here to this tool, Align, and then I'm going to click on the edge I want to keep and the edge I want to bring it to. And those two would then sit aligned with each other. And so I can show that in a little bit more detail of here. If I just put a wall here and another wall here, and I want to align them, again, I'll click on one of them, align, the wall I want to keep, the wall I want to bring to it, and it'll bring those lined up with each other. So I'll often use this if I want to just have kind of symmetry between things. If I have a door here and a door here and I want them to have that same alignment, I would use the Align tool. Or if I had like a window sitting above a toilet and I wanted those to sit center with each other, I would use the Align tool. Nothing right now to use it for, but just in the future. And hopefully we'll bring it up in some part of this project, but we'll see. So I have all the walls on my first floor done and ready to go. I'm now going to go up to my level 2 plan, and within here it's showing me the underlay of my level 1, which is not what I want to do. I want to see this over in level 2. So what I need to do is first come to my properties bar for this floor plan, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to the underlay. And right now what I'm going to do is turn level 1 as my base level to none. So I'm just going to turn my underlay off and move my cursor out. So now it's only just giving me the bounding box of my exterior wall, since I made those walls go up to the roof. And I'm going to insert my CAD file in a second time. So I'm going to come to Insert, Import CAD. When this window pops up, I'll say that I wanted to import this, and I'm going to leave this setting as specify. It remembered last time that's what I wanted to do, so it's assuming that's what I want to do again. And when this pops up, I'm going to uncheck everything, so I'll click on Check None. I'm going to say that I want just all of the plan layers included. So this now is again giving me my level 1 floor plan and my level 2 floor plan. So I'm just going to click on it, unpin it, and then I'm going to move it so that way I have the level 2 plan. If I want to move it directly based on a specific point, instead of dragging it, I can also use the move tool to grab it by the end of it and put it on the end here. So that way I can kind of just have it sitting exactly in a specific spot. And I could also use my keys on my keyboard to kind of tap it into place of where I might want it to sit. So now I've got my level 2 floor plan sitting on my level 2. And I can do the same thing with the wall tool of tracing out those walls. So I'll go into my architecture tab, wall. I'm going to do just again a generic 5-inch wall. For my base constraint, I want these walls to start at level 2. And for my top constraint, I want them to go up to the roof, which now I'm actually going to go into my 3D view and double check something. Okay, good. Because I was like, did I not set the top constraint to these to go up to level 2? But I did. So right now we just have, if I orbit around holding the scroll wheel and the shift key, we just kind of have some generic gray walls in there. I'll go back into my level 2 plan. If I had accidentally not set my walls, I could go back and I could change them. But up to level 2, up to roof, starting at level 2, up to roof. And I'm just going to put a wall all the way through here. Hit escape to get out of that chain of it. Wall here. And here. Hit escape to get out of the chain. Another wall here. And this one's going to be a little tricky to get. There we go. And another wall through here. And I'll hit escape to end the command a bunch. If it bugs you that this isn't in line, you can either use your arrow keys to nudge it into place, but again, later on in the project, we're going to put specific measurements to everything. So that way, it's going to shift the walls once we put our dimensions in for everything anyway. So I'm not going to stress out too much about it. I'm also going to add in some half walls over here for around where this opening is going to be in the staircase. So I'm going to go back into my wall tool, but this time for my top constraint, instead of having it go up to level roof, I'm going to leave the top constraint as unconnected. And then for my unconnected height, instead of 20 feet, I'm going to say around 3 feet or so. And again, you never have to click on apply. You can just move your cursor out of there. And I'm just going to trace around this part of the railing. So one thing you can see too, when I hit escape to end the command, is that these lines, the line weight is a lot thinner because these are sitting directly on the cut plane where these are sitting underneath it, and that's why they have a thinner line weight. So Revit is going to take care of a lot of that kind of stuff for us when it comes to all of those standards in a particular drawing, which is kind of cool. I also realized though that I'm not done with walls. I still have all of these closets to do. Whoops. I'll go back into the wall tool. I'll put a wall here for this closet, which this one doesn't have the right height anymore. So I'll hit escape because it no longer is going up to the roof, but I can just click on it and I can just change it afterwards. So if you make a mistake, mistakes are pretty easy to fix in here. So I'll hit escape a bunch of times. I'll go back into the wall tool. And this time before I start, I'm going to change my top constraint to say go up to level roof. Put my wall here, hit escape. Put my wall here, hit escape. Put my wall here, hit escape twice because I think I'm all done. This wall is a little bit thicker because again, this is going to have a lot of plumbing and piping going through. We're going to just, since this is our first Revit project, we're going to ignore that. But we now have all of our walls placed. So this would be a great time to hit save if Revit hasn't prompted you to save yet. We're going to go File, Save As, Project. We save it as a project. Where you put it doesn't matter to me as long as you know where you're putting it. I'm going to put it in my folder here. And I'll name it, I'm going to name mine Video Cardinal just so that way I know that this is the one that I'm using in these videos. And then I'll save it. Revit, like I mentioned in the first video, it's going to prompt you about every 30-ish minutes or so to save your work if you haven't, but it's always kind of a good idea to do so. One thing that I also am going to mention, but I'll do a little bit of something different with it, is right here. This is the doorway to this bedroom door. I'm actually going to put in like a cased opening here instead of just leave it as 2 empty walls. So that's why I'm just going to leave this wall as one big piece coming down here. Because also realistically, this wall is probably doubling with a support for our bridge and like our ceiling, since it's going perfectly or almost perfectly down the middle of the house. And I bet in their actual floor plan, I don't know if we don't have the second story as a picture, which is weird, but it's most likely sitting perfectly center. So that's why I'm going to leave that all as framed as one piece. Okay, so next we'll do let's actually do some doors before we do some windows. We're going to switch it up a little bit. So we'll do our doors next because they'll be a little easier to find. So the door tool is located right up here in Revit. And if I start the door tool, it looks sort of like the wall tool, but it's just a little bit different. And we have the options here to switch between different size doors, but we do only have this single flush door loaded in by default. And it's still going to solve most of our needs in here, but we will just need to put in a different door here for the closets and also then the cased opening here. But what I'll just do to start out is I'm going to switch myself to the 30 by 80 door. And if I just hover over where I want a door to go, it'll give me a little bit of a preview of what it's looking like. So that also means that my guess for the door size to me looks pretty accurate. Depending on where I hover over the wall, it will help determine which way it swings. But then also I can hit the space bar on my keyboard to switch it back and forth. Even if I place my door and I'm not satisfied with it, I can click on these buttons here to switch it around. So if I want to move my door around, I can move my door around. So I'll place another door right here. I'm just kind of eyeballing them into place. If they're not perfect or perfectly accurate, it'll be okay. I promise. Whoops, I put my hand on the trackpad. So again, if I just want to flip which way that door is swinging before I place it, I can hit the space bar. And if I want to move it afterwards, I can use those arrows. And then I have all of my just regular flush swing doors in place here. But now I want a pocket door here to kind of connect this little vanity area to this part of the bathroom. I want to put a cased opening here, and I want to put sliding doors here. And when I go to my different types of doors, I only just have a single flush. So what I'm going to need to do is load in a different door type. So while I'm currently in the door tool, I'm going to come up here to my toolbar and I'm going to click on Load Family. If you're on your laptop and you did not install the content library, then when you click on Load Family, you're probably not going to see a whole lot in this folder. So again, if you downloaded your own student version of Revit, you're going to need to make sure that you install the content library. But this is all the different components that you can have by default in Revit. You can also download ones off the internet, kind of like blocks. But I'm going to go into the door folder because this is most likely going to have doors in it. So if I double click on it, it's going to show me a heck of a lot of doors. If I click once, I'll get a little preview over here. And I can use my arrow keys to even just kind of shuffle through with just looking at some of these. And I'm going to say that I don't want a double glass one for mine. So I'm actually going to go into the residential folder, which gives me even more doors. Here's some French doors. So again, I just clicked on one and I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of go through them. So this is a double pocket door, which is not what I want. I just want a double sliding wood for here. So I'll click on this one and I'll say open it. And it's going to ask me what size I want to open. So I can click on one, I can hold control and click on others if I wanted to. I'm just going to load in this. I'll load in the 4-foot one and the 5-foot one. I'll see. So I just clicked on one, held control, clicked on the other. And that has loaded in this new door type. Seems like this 4-foot by 80 is going to fit pretty nicely for the closet. So I'm just going to place one there. And I'll place the other one here. It gives me in those witness lines some like help to center it as well, which is pretty nice. I'm aware that these doors are much larger than the ones that were in the CAD file, but that's okay. I think it's actually a little bit better, frankly, that these doors were a little bit wider, so I did them a favor. I'll have to load in another door here for my cased opening for just like my archway here. So I'll go into load family. By default, it's going to bring me back into the last folder I was ever in. So it just brought me right back into this residential folder. I'm going to click up here to go back into just all doors because I want just a door opening. Excuse me. And so I went to load family, I clicked on door opening, and I said open. And then I can place an opening here, and it's going to put a symbol there and everything to show that this is a cased opening. And I'll have to load in a pocket door here as well. So one more time, I'll load in a family. When these families all pop up, none of these are pocket doors. So I'll go into the residential folder, and we have, I believe if we scroll down all the way at the bottom, there is a door interior single pocket. And I'll click on OK. And this one I know is a little bit thinner or a little bit skinnier, so I'm going to do the 28" by 81. And when I load that in, for whatever reason, when I placed my door, it has the pocket sliding this way, which is not what I want. So I'm just going to bump it to go that way. So that way the door opens up into there. And I'll hit escape. And it looks like I've got all of my doors for the second story ready to go. So I'm going to do the same thing on the first story. I'll go into level 1. We are going to have a little bit of a yuck here with this door, just because, and I tried it out last semester, if we edit the way the symbol is showing, we can only edit it for the entire family, which means we're going to edit the way all the single flush doors open. So we're just going to have like a little bit of a weird overlap going on here with the symbols. So my apologies, but I'll go back into my door tool. By default, it put me into the pocket door since that was the last door I used. If I click here, I can switch that up. So I can say that I want a 36" door, because for an exterior one, it's probably going to be a little bigger. Hover over the side you want it to go to, and use the space bar to flip it, or use these arrows afterwards. And I'll put another 36" door back here. Then I'll switch my door type to a single flush 30" for this closet. Later on, for this closet too, so this is a closet that's going to be sitting under the stairs because the stairs travel up this way. I actually had to go in and modify the door height because it was sticking into the stairs. So when we place stairs, we'll go over that too. I'll put another door here. I'll hit escape. I'm just going to click on this door and, my opinion, move it because I do not like how it was sitting. If I wanted to line these two doors up with each other, I could use the align tool to say I want the center of this door and the center of this door to sit with each other. And I can also lock alignments. And what's really cool with that is then if I hit escape a bunch of times, if I move this door, the other door moves with it, and vice versa, because I've locked these two things together. I've said they have to move with each other. I'm going to go back, though, into my door tool. And it looks like, well, no, actually, I think this is the right size door here for this closet. I know this is yucky, but there's nothing I can do about it without having to put in a heck of a lot of effort to rework the whole family. So we're just going to let it sit and be a little yucky. For the water heater, this door is also a little larger than what they specified, but I'm just going to leave it a little bit larger because it'll be okay. However, if we wanted to make it a little bit smaller, so for this part that goes into this mechanical room that has the air handler in it, this door is going to be awkwardly big to fit there. So what I want to do is customize a new door that's really small. So what I'm going to do while I'm in the door tool is I'm going to click here on edit type. And when this menu pops up, first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this door, and I'm just going to call it skinny door. You can also give it the name of like the size that you're using. I usually just put something that reminds me like what exactly it is. So I'm just going to call it skinny door, and I'm going to change its width to, I don't know, like 1'8". 1'8". And I'll click apply, and I'll click OK. And now we can see that my door type is skinny door, and I kind of nailed that. Wow, go me. So that way I can put a skinny tiny door in here. Same thing then here is I'm going to need to change my door type. However, Revit does not have a bifold door in the component library by default, so I'm going to make this into a sliding door just because that'll be easier. So I'm going to come up to my door type selector, and I'm going to scroll up until I find my sliding door. I'll make this one a 5 foot, so the 60 by 80. And I'll click to place it. Hit escape twice. If I don't like where it's sitting, I can kind of play around with this a bit. That seems, I know it's not center based on those measurements, but seems good enough for me. So at this point now I've got all of my doors and I've got my walls. And what I need to do now is place in my windows. Now when it comes to the windows, we can't see them at the moment because they're hidden by the walls that are sitting over them. So what I'm going to do is change my visual style here, so that way I'll be able to see windows when I go to place them, or see where they're getting placed. So I'm going to come down here to my visual styles, and I'm going to switch it to wireframe. I don't recommend working in wireframe, but in this particular instance, wireframe is going to be helpful to us. And then I'm going to go into the window tool. So for our windows, the only one loaded in by default here, actually looks like they gave us a couple more, yay. So they gave us a fixed window with a few different widths and heights. They gave us a casement double window with a few different widths and heights, and then also a double hung window with a couple of different widths and heights. I'm going to guess what some of these are, and then if I need to make any custom ones, which I know I do, I'll just update those kind of as I go. I want to try to keep my heights pretty consistent, because if we look in, or look at our beautiful drawing that we got of its rendering, these are all sitting at a pretty consistent height, and then this one's a little shorter because it's sitting on top of that sink. These ones here in the bedroom, and then this one is actually above where that little like desk is in the like entryway sort of upstairs, the vestibule, I guess. These are a little bit shorter. This one here in the master bedroom's a little longer. I might just make it the same as these two because I think it may look better that way. So we can again take some of those creative liberties when it comes to things like that. The creative liberty we can't take is just to not put windows in. But I'm going to switch my window to, let me do a 28 by 46, and I'll just hover it over there, and that's definitely not big enough. So then I'll do the 30 by 46, and even then that's still not big enough for that one, but it is big enough to fit here. So I'm just going to place one, place my second one. I'll come back and do this middle one here. Not big enough for that guy. This one I'll want to change its height. Same thing there with that bathroom one. So right now I just did these two. And what I need to do now is make just a slightly larger version of this window here. So I'm going to click on Edit Type. I'm going to first duplicate it. And this one I'll call like 36 inch by 42, 46 inch. So that way I keep this one at a consistent height. That only renamed its type though. It didn't actually change anything related to its width. So I'm going to come down to this width and I'm going to change it to 3 foot. Enter. And I'll click OK. And now I've got this window here. I'll put another one here and another one next to it. And then I'm going to make another new window, but one for the sink and bathroom. So I'm going to go Edit Type, Duplicate, and I'll call this one the short windows. And for its width, it's probably sitting around like 2'8" maybe. For its height, it's going to be, I'll say around 2 foot. So height of 2 foot, width of 2'8". We'll play around with that. And I'll click OK. By default, it put me in the last one I used. Right now, I've been using a sill height of 3 foot. So when I placed this guy, this one, and this one, they all had a sill height of 3. I'm going to change that to be around like 4.5. Whoops. I typed in 460. So 4 space 6, move my cursor out of it. These windows are way too wide. Well, I guess this one's not too wide. So I'll put that guy here. For this one, do I want to keep it that wide? For the sake of a demo, I'll just show again how to change it. So I'll go Edit, Duplicate, Bathroom window. And I'll change its width. I'll make it 2'4". Okay. I'll change its sill height to 4'6". That's good enough. And so I've got windows here placed on the first floor. If I go into my 3D view, we can see then that this window is a little bit shorter, but it's also then sitting higher up. If I wanted to have all of these have the same header height, what I could do is go into my elevation of the south of my building, and I could do, again, an alignment. So I could click on this window, align, and say that I want the top of this window to sit flush with the top of this window, and it's just going to move it up there. So I don't even have to worry too much about the sill. If it bugs you too here, how these windows are kind of overlapping each other, we can use this join tool to join this window and this window together. So I'll just undo that to show it again. So that's join. I click on this guy, I click on this guy, and it makes them then into kind of one window bank where they're almost like a shared set of double hung windows. Here, I'm going to put a fixed window, because what's most likely going on here, and yeah, it looks like it here, is that this is a movable, operable window, this one's movable, and this is just a pane of glass to make this into kind of like a big picture window. So I'll go back into my level 1 floor plan, I'll go back into my architecture tab, I'll go back into window, and I'm going to make a fixed window, which it doesn't look like they have one of our exact size. And I want a little bit larger than 36. So I'm going to Edit Type, I'm going to duplicate it and call it Picture Window. For my height, I want 46 inches, so 3'10", purely because that's what these heights were, so I wanted to match that. And for width, let's try 4 foot. So I'm just going to make it 4 foot wide, height of 3'10". That seems to fit pretty darn well. So I'm just going to click there to place it. I'll go into my 3D view. There are a couple of things I dislike about this, but I can fix it a little later in it. Or maybe, you know what we might do? We might make this a double hung window just to make it match. Because again, for a first practice, I don't know if we can fix all that. So I'll go into edit type. I'll duplicate this. I'll call it my picture fix. And I'm going to just change its width to be 4. And if I hit apply, I should be able to see here the update being made, but apparently not. And again, if it's going to bug you that these all just kind of like overlap awkwardly, click on one of them, join this window and this window, this window and this window, and it'll kind of make them into one nicer seamless bag in here. So I'll do the same process for my windows. Let me just orbit around a little bit to show you. I got this one here too for my windows on the second floor. So I'm going to go into level 2. I'm going to switch my visual style to wireframe. I'm going to go into the window tool and I'm going to change my window type. For these ones, I'm going to use the short window that I had in the kitchen, and I'll bump my sill height up again to like 4'6". Will this be exactly what I want sill height wise? I won't know until I put a roof in. So I'm just going to click to place that. Click to place that one. And I know they're not the perfect size, but they'll be okay. But once I put my roof in, I can then modify the heights of those if I want. My 36-inch window, I'll put one here in this bedroom. I'll put one here in this bedroom. I'll put, maybe I want to make those ones a little smaller. So I'll come up here, I'll switch my size to the 28. That seems like a good size. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll put my small bathroom window in as well. So I'll come here and I'll just say bathroom window. For sill height, again, we usually want something around like 4.5 feet or 5 feet. Usually just bathroom windows are a little bit higher up for privacy. Sometimes they're even higher than where I have it. And I'll just click to place. I'll come to my 3D view to just double check everything too, that like it's looking how I want it to. I'll orbit myself around. Again, personally, it bugs me when I have this weird overlap here. So I'm just going to hit escape a bunch of times, click on one window, join, 1, 2, and then it just makes it into a little bit of a nicer look. And at this point then, I've got all of my windows good to go, and I've got all of my doors, I've got all of my walls. The last thing we're going to do then in this video is place in some floors. So floors are going to be placed on each level, and we can do them kind of in a couple of different ways. Since we have this staircase that we need to consider, if I orbit around a little, we can see it. I've got this staircase here that I need to consider on my second floor. This isn't going to have a floor in this whole area because this is just going to be open for the staircase to come up. My first level will be a little bit easier to do because I don't have to take something like that into consideration. So I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan. I'm going to switch my visual style back to hidden line so that this way I'm not seeing all of those overlaps. After we place in some of our components too, we'll be able to actually just get rid of this background CAD picture. But I'm switched over back to hidden line, and I'm going to go into the floor tool. So the floor tool is located right here. And what it's going to do by default is it's going to bring you into this menu that you cannot do anything else in the software until you either say, cool, make my floor, or never mind, cancel making my floor. It also by default put me into this drawing tool called Pick Walls. What Pick Walls allows us to do is just not have to draw in our floor boundary, but rather we can select it based on the walls that already exist. So all I have to do is click on each of the walls that I want to make a floor for, and it'll create that floor boundary for me. And I'm going to Control Z to even show you a faster way to do it. Within this Pick Walls tool, if I hover over one of my exterior walls, I can just hit Tab, and then it will select the chain, and I can just click, and it's selected the entire boundary. These lines here are referring to which way your joister's spanning. So because this was the wall I clicked first, my joister's spanning across this way, which is not likely how things would be constructed. They're most likely going to go this way because this is the shorter distance to span. If I want to switch that, all I have to do is click Escape a couple times, click on one of these that I want my span associated with, and then come up here to click on Span Direction. And I'll click on that. And now it's moved it, so now the span of my joists are going this way. Not crucial, but especially if I'm going to be sending my drawings off to a civil engineer or structural engineer, they'll need to know things about my span of my joist and my beams and things like that. Now, for a floor to be able to be created, it also has to be a completely enclosed shape. So if I have this sticking out, what I did was just click on that and I just dragged it out, and I try to say, okay, finish making my floor, it's going to yell at me and say, we can't make your floor with that weird thing up there. This has to be a closed loop. And again, if I drag this down and I say unjoin them, and so now I have this weird gap here, and I click OK, it's going to again warn me this has to be a closed loop, and it's even telling me where I have my opening. Click to drag that, and now it'll be, when I click on finished, a closed loop, and I have a floor. From this view, when I click off of the floor, it doesn't really seem like it's there, but if I click on my 3D view, we can now see that we do in fact have a floor underneath here. One thing I'm also going to do right now is I'm just going to hide these CAD drawings in the 3D view because they're annoying me. So I'm just going to click on one of them, right click, hide, category, right click, hide in view, category, because they're just bugging me. So I want them gone in this view. They're useful in my 2D views, but they're not useful here. You can see here that I have my little floor sitting underneath it. Later on, when we define everything with our walls, we're also then going to define our floor, so that way it's not just going to be a generic 12-inch mass. So I'm going to do the same thing on level 2, but I'm going to have to make a couple of changes. So I'm going to go to my level 2 floor plan. I'm going to come to my visual styles, switch it back to hidden line. And now I'm going to, in my architecture tab, click on my floor tool. And I can still pick walls for the majority of this. So I can go here to here to here. And I could even click on this final one if I wanted to, but instead what I'm going to do is just draw in my own lines manually of saying that I want to go from here out to here to here. Now what's going to happen after I finish drawing my boundary around my staircase is, because these lines don't meet each other, when I try to make it, it's going to yell at me. So if I try to say make this floor, it's going to say that these lines are intersecting and I have to again fix these corners up. So I'm just going to click on that corner and drag it down and over here too. Or I could use this trim and extend tool to just say here and here, so that way this does become one closed loop. When I hit this green check, I should get a prompt asking me if I want to connect walls to the top of the floor, top of the walls to the floor. Yeah. So it's saying, would you like the walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to the bottom of this floor? And I usually say yes. We'll click OK. We'll click yes. We'll see if when we go into the 3D view what that might have done, because it might have done nothing. Those warnings I wasn't expecting, but it doesn't look like any problem occurred from it, so it should be okay. Yeah, okay, we're all right. So at this point then, we've got the majority of our building ready to go. We've got our walls, we've got our doors, we've got our windows, we've got our floor. In the next video, we're going to go over how to define all of our different parameters within our wall. So how we can make this wall where it has siding, sheathing, a stud, and gypsum wallboard versus our interior walls then having drywall with a stud in the middle. How we can change how some of that is going to appear visually in the model, and the same thing then with our floor. We'll also create a roof in our next demo as well. So I'll see you then.